Hey everybody, and welcome to a major wild ride with Steve-O. What are we doing here on the beach? You don't worry about that, folks, okay? What I'm talking about is we got my dad this week. And what do you think of my dad?
Your dad is one of the raddest dudes. I remember back when we were knuckleheads, I told this story before, and your dad sat you and me aside and said, dudes, don't blow your money, don't buy no homes, wait 5 years. And I always listen to that, and that's when I bought my first big house, was right when your dad said to wait 5 years.
And you sold it for more than double?
Yeah. Thanks, Pops.
He sold it for more than double, ladies and gentlemen, because my dad is the man. Now, we're starting this episode off in a special way, okay? Because it was, 2019, about 2 years ago exactly, when I tried to record my very first ever podcast. This was my first attempt at podcasting, and I'm going to play a minute and a half of that first effort. And then we're going to kick into the new one. So, let's get into it. Real quick, Dad, how about if we give everybody an overview? Tell us about your career yourself.
Started my corporate career in Toronto, and we moved around the world, a number of different major companies, Procter & Gamble, PepsiCo, R.J. Reynolds Tobacco, Del Monte Foods, Nabisco Brands, and Campbell Soup. You lived in, 4 different countries by the time? 4 different countries by the time you were 3. 5 different countries by the time you got to high school. And by the age of 3, you'd spoken 3 languages fluently.
As I understand it, you were president of all of Pepsi-Cola in all of Brazil when I was 6 months old.
That's correct. It was the ideal size profit center for one's first experience as general manager.
The ideal size. Okay, I want to get into you before you were married. Is it true that you were charged with a crime and your defense was that you couldn't have possibly committed the crime because you were far too drunk?
It was a college incident, and it was a student court, and they accused me of causing damage with willful intent. And my defense was that I was too drunk to be capable of having any intent.
Ladies and gentlemen, my dad. Yeah, dude. And of course, I don't have to introduce you to Scott Randolph or Paul Brisky, but I do want to thank you for being here.
Well, it's great to be here, and I've watched enough of your podcasts that it's terrific to now be able to participate in one.
Yeah.
Do you watch every podcast?
No.
Just when Mark Cuban is on.
Well,
Mark Cuban, Mike Tyson, Shaquille O'Neal.
Jerry Rice.
Jerry
Nice.
Rice,
All
yeah.
right.
So if Dad's aware of and interested in the guest, we can count on him listening.
Cool. Have you noticed, how are we doing with the show? Are we improving? Is it...
Paul, I don't think I've seen enough, and I haven't looked at it from the standpoint of comparing.
Uh-huh.
I've either liked it or I haven't liked it, and I've been focused more on Steve's interviewing skills. And it's really interesting, the differences, depending on the guest that he has.
Right. I do believe that I've grown substantially as a result of doing this podcast. I think I still have ways to go, but it's definitely getting better.
Well, life is a journey, and if you hadn't grown some, you'd be a failure. And
Right.
the promise of future growth keeps you going.
Absolutely. And honestly, I never predicted that podcasting would represent really just an exercise in me improving my ability to communicate.
Well, it does. It shows.
And that's the benefit I get from it above all else.
Yep.
And I had to show my ass to the world a lot, and I continue to do so, but the benefit is real.
You're evolving, and that's important.
Right. So we established your background with a clip that we recorded either over or about exactly 2 years ago. And you're a very impressive guy. And from here, I think that we should let the world in on our history, right?
Go for it.
Okay, let me ask you, how many times would you estimate that you were called into school to meet my teachers on a day that was not actually designated for meetings between parents and teachers?
There were many incidents. Some of them by phone, some of them by report card. But the one thing that was consistent was that Steve is capable of so much more if he only put some effort into it.
That was a mantra, and it used to be the teacher saying that until the Motley Crue story. And without rehashing it, I called every hotel in the Yellow Pages to meet Motley Crue. I accomplished that. You took photos of me with the members of Motley Crue, and then it turned into a curse for the rest of my life. He said every time a report card came in, every time I was Steve, if you would just show the initiative to your schoolwork, to fill in the blank that you did to meet Motley Crue, you could accomplish anything.
Yeah, well, you spent a whole Sunday afternoon calling every hotel in the Toronto telephone book, and it took you until the end of the day to get the right hotel. So that was initiative.
Yeah.
And that was lacking in every other aspect of your life.
Right.
Was that really the first time you saw Steve like take any sort of real passion and initiative for something?
Yeah. He had, as a kid, Little League Baseball. I mean, there was a lot of stuff when he put his mind to something, he would go out and do it. But that was, to me, the most impressive.
It was...
What grade were you in when you did that?
I was in 8th grade.
And you went to school the next day and you're like, guess what, dudes?
I went to school the next day wearing my girls concert t-shirt, which had like just a big stripper bent over with her butt and a thong, and they sent me home from school that day to change my shirt.
Really?
Yeah, I was super proud of that.
Oh, the thing I remember was that
The curse started.
our company had a skybox in the Maple Leaf Gardens, and nobody that in the company would want to go and see the Motley Crue. So I got the skybox, and I got somebody to smuggle in your recording equipment.
Well, no, we did. We did it. We brought it, and we went.
No,
up there.
I think you gave it to the company driver, and he put it in ahead of time because you wouldn't have been allowed in the door of the gardens with your recording equipment. And I came home as a surprise, and I said, Steve, guess what? I got the skybox at the gardens. You got your recording in there, and I thought I was super, Dad. I really felt hot shit.
Right.
And your immediate reaction was, shit, Dad, that's lame. Who wants to watch the Crue in a skybox?
Yeah, dude, watching Motley Crue like behind a plate glass window sucks.
And then I said, fine. You get better seats on your initiative, and I'll take you there, and easy to cancel the box. But if you want better seating than that, you got to accomplish it. And that's where the initiative piece came in.
Whoa, okay.
That, coupled with the fact that I saw the day before the concert that Motley Crue was in town, and the news was complaining that these rock stars in our town causing trouble, and I was like, wow, they're already here. But I think that's an old story. We don't need to rehash too much. I think what's interesting to me is to make clear what your job was and what the company was at that time. Of course, it was Nabisco, makers of Oreos, and all kinds of National Biscuit Company is what Nabisco means. And you were the president of Nabisco in Canada?
Yes.
And it was the Nabisco Skybox.
Correct.
And your job with Nabisco was born of your previous job with R.J. Reynolds Tobacco.
In between what happened, I joined RJR for the Latin America job, and then we moved back to London with Del Monte, which was part of RJR, and I did that. And then RJR, including Del Monte, merged with Nabisco. And after the merger, I ended up in Canada running the Canadian piece.
All right.
How many countries have you been to? Do you know off the top of your head?
I don't know.
You don't keep track like Steve?
I would say, probably all of Western Europe, all of South America except Chile and Bolivia, Guatemala, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, and Central America, and I guess a couple of trips to India. And
You went to Russia. I wasn't like 2 weeks away from being born in Russia.
No, you were 2 weeks away from being born when we went to Morocco, but you were the most traveled fetus. But that wasn't to do with the job. We just happened to live in London, and your mom and I took a lot of short trips to a lot of different places because it was easy to do and at the time relatively inexpensive.
Right. What was the story with Russia? There was like some car chase or some crazy
Wait,
debacle.
you got in a car chase?
We your mom and I went to Moscow for 4 days with an American couple that we were very friendly with in London. And we ended up in the bar in what the time was a leading hotel. It was called the Inn Tourist Hotel in Moscow. That was when Russia was a completely different place from what it is now. And somehow we got talking to these two black guys from the Republic of Chad. They told us that they were working with the Chad embassy in Moscow. Point was, one of them didn't speak any English, so your mom and I talked to them primarily in French and bored the shit out of our friends from Texas. And then, after not too long, the older brother, who was accompanied with a white Russian lady, excused himself and disappeared. And shortly after that, the younger brother who remained said, "Hey, we got this great party tonight at the Chad embassy. Do you want to go to the party?" And with hindsight, he was obviously trying to create some problems and hook up with one of our wives. The Texas couple got into a fight and they screwed off and went to bed. And your mom had a couple of drinks and decided she wanted to go to bed. And strangely, she was accepting when I said, "Well, shit, I want to go to the party at the embassy." So we're in this taxi driving across Moscow, and suddenly the taxi pulled to a stop. And what was supposedly the embassy was this crappy-looking apartment building. And he went into this single-room apartment with a naked light bulb hanging in the center of the room. And the older brother was already in bed with a white Russian. And the younger brother wanted to kick me out because, what the fuck, he didn't get what he wanted, and why should he worry about me, this crazy foreigner? Happily, the older brother, climbed out of bed and put on his pants and went out into the street with me and got me a taxi to get back to the hotel. And your mom was sound asleep, and I was able to get in without waking her up, and life was very happy the next morning.
Okay.
Wow. So there was no party. They were just
There was
No, there was no party. There was no party at all.
This was a guy trying to bone my mom.
Is there even an embassy of Chad in Russia?
I would guess there was, but I don't know.
Okay. Now, I remember Mom telling me about a time when you guys smoked pot together. Oh, snap. I just called out Dad for blazing hay, for firing up the doobage. And I might be about to call him out on boning my mom. Yeah, well, hey, you know what? I'm going to call myself out for boning this little hot chunk of puss. I got my girl standing right next to me, Lux. She's all dolled up, looking fine, and making me feel kind of horny. When I'm feeling kind of horny and I really want that extra oomph, you know what I do? I take a Blue Chew. What's a Blue Chew? It's a tablet that has the same active ingredient as both Viagra and Cialis. And what does it do when I take it? It gives me a rock-hard boner, frankly. Yeah. Plus, this tablet is a fraction of the cost of Viagra and Cialis, and it's chewable. And when I chew it, my tongue turns blue. And when I show Lux my blue tongue, what happens, babe?
I just start stripping off my clothes. I know it's go time.
Yeah. Have I ever let you down after taking a Blue Chew?
No, it is highly effective and appreciated.
Yeah. So, how do you get one? Well, you go to BlueChew.com, and remember that the promo code STEVO will help you out greatly. But what's important about going to BlueChew.com is that it doesn't require any awkward visit to a doctor. You don't have to physically go into any weird doctor appointment because you just consult with one of their medical providers right there at BlueChew.com, and it's super simple. And then the things just show up in the mail, okay? Now, how do you get an entire month's supply completely for free? Well, you go to BlueChew.com and you use the promo code STEVO. You get an entire month's supply completely for free. All you have to pay is $5 for shipping. And, honey, one more time, how hard do I bone you after I take a Blue Chew?
So hard.
Yeah. Okay, so one more time, 3 month supply. All you gotta pay is $5. Go to BlueChew.com and use the promo code STEVO. All right, now let's talk about my dad getting baked. And you insisted that it had no effect on you, but Mom said that was absurd. It was laughable that after smoking the marijuana, that you guys like wiped out all of the food in the pantry and the fridge, and then you vigorously made love, and that you were very, very stoned.
Well,
Mom said you were stoned.
I'm really glad that she used the word vigorous. I don't remember eating all the food, but it was an experiment that was not repeated.
When and where was this?
This was in London in probably 1973, about the same time as a Russia trip.
Okay, so Dad was into experiments.
Yeah, you go to like swingers parties and
Yeah, what's
smoking
going
weed.
on, Ted?
That's great.
What company were you with at that point?
Pepsi.
Oh, Pepsi.
Yeah.
Okay.
A more liberal company than Nabisco.
No, I'd say they were equally liberal. I mean, both of those companies were very, very high performance companies. You delivered, they treated you like God. You didn't deliver, and you were out the door. And I loved that environment.
Good.
Did they care that you're stoned half the time?
Shit, I mean, you make these idiot remarks, and then you try to get a reaction.
I mean, we're all laughing. He's doing his job. So that was in London, where, of course, I was born.
Correct.
In 1974.
Correct.
You're already working for Pepsi. So, if I understand it, where my older sister Cindy was born in Connecticut, that's where you were working for Procter & Gamble.
No, I worked for Procter & Gamble in Toronto.
In Toronto.
I left Procter & Gamble to join a marketing consulting company in Connecticut, and from there I went to PepsiCo.
And PepsiCo, you went to London and got promoted to the Brazil position when I was 6 months old, and so I moved from London to Brazil when I was 6 months old.
Correct.
And so then we only lived in Brazil for about a year and a half?
2
years. So I was 2.5 years old when we moved from Brazil to Venezuela.
Correct.
Caracas, Venezuela, and that was because you got promoted within Pepsi to not just all of Brazil, but Central America.
Actually, Brazil was part of the Latin America group, and I reported to a boss in Buenos Aires. And when we moved to Caracas, they divided that into 2 halves, and I had the half that went from the north border of Brazil up to the south border of Mexico.
So that was an upgrade.
That was called North Latin America, and yeah, that was a significant promotion.
Significant promotion. So I'm 2.5 years old at this point, and I'm speaking English with you guys.
Yeah.
I had been speaking Portuguese in Brazil, and now I'm in Caracas, Venezuela, so this is where I learned to speak Spanish.
Correct.
In nursery school.
Correct. Yeah, and with the maids at home.
Right. And when was it the first day of nursery school that Mom picked me up and they said there was a real problem?
Oh, yeah.
What was the problem?
Well, I forget the word.
Tremendo.
Tremendo. And, yeah. And at that time, our Spanish, was okay, but needed work.
Yeah.
And tremendo.
Well, right. My mom shows up to pick up.
Yeah, and we both thought that was really good. I mean,
right.
And then we asked somebody,
Well, I mean, you presumably weren't there. Mom picked me up.
Yeah, and she told me the story afterwards.
She
told me the story when
the teacher said,
Mom,
what? Steve is tremendous.
Yeah, so Mom said, how was my son? Oh, he was tremendo.
Yeah, but nobody there spoke any English. So
right.
all the communication was in Spanish.
So like, you need to know that your son is tremendo.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay.
So mom's really pretty happy about this. She comes home to brag about it.
Yeah, it
to
takes the good
everybody.
news back to Ted.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she comes over, hey, how about that? My son's tremendo, guys. And the Spanish-speaking friends said, hey, that's not...
Tremendo is like a storm, like a hurricane, like a piece of shit.
Yeah, not fucking cool.
So that's you at 3 years old. Like, what could you have even done in there,
Right.
Well, the interesting thing, I remember you were watching a lot of, Spanish language TV, and it was all, American programming with Spanish soundtrack dubbed in. And when we moved up to Connecticut, there was about 2 weeks before we moved into our new house. And we stayed in a Holiday Inn, and we chose it for its proximity to the house and the school, and it was really kind of a tacky Holiday Inn with, cigarette burns in the carpet and, crappy furniture and all the rest of it. And Mom told me that, the first day you're getting ready to go to nursery school, and you turned to Mom and said, Mom, when are we going to get to America?
All right. And I was a problem. So I was a problem I was tremendo on day one of nursery school at 2 years old. And I was safe to say I was a problem in kindergarten, first.
Yeah, like Ted, when you're getting called to the school to talk to the principal when Steve's, in like middle school or something, what are those calls for? Like, what did Steve do?
Well, they were always taken by his mother, and so I got it secondhand. And I don't remember that many meetings. I remember a lot of report cards and a lot of conversations. But to the extent we went to meetings, it was basically the same old story. Steve's got so much more potential, and he doesn't use it, and he's disruptive in class, and he should be getting much higher grades, and what are you going to do about it?
Right.
And we said all the appropriate things, and life went on without a whole lot of change.
So I'm curious, I'm sure all parents go through, just sort of fearing for your child's future, or what was in your head, were you like, I don't know what this kid's future is going to be like, or were you optimistic, like he'll figure it out? Like, what was your perception of what Steve's future was going to look like?
Never really got that far thinking about it. I mean, we were always living in the present.
Okay.
Yeah.
Putting out fires in the present.
Yeah. So then, it's kind of moving through grade school, and we moved to Miami when I was in first grade. I remember my first day of first grade. The classroom had the whole wall was just a window, right? Because it was sort of like it was an outdoor kind of campus. And Mom showed up to pick me up, somewhat before the bell rang to release it. So Mom's standing outside the window, and I'm I remember climbing on top of my desk and waving, yeah, Mom, look at me. It was just what the hell? It was, and I just don't know. I always just had this super crazy, overdeveloped need for attention, and that drove everything to this day. And then, so fourth grade, still in Florida, we moved to England again. How about
Now, just a sec. Before you leave fourth grade, that was the only teacher you connected with where you got good grades.
Right.
And, I forget his name.
Oh.
But I think he was the only male teacher you'd had.
And he came to my football games.
Yeah. And
Stan Fenton.
Yeah. And he showed what could be.
Right.
And then it kind of went down the tube when you got to London.
Yeah, got to London. Okay, so we moved to London. I'm in fourth grade. I'm 9 years old, and and there was sort of an interim apartment building that we lived in while mom and dad were looking for a house to get. And in this apartment building, there was this creepy, like, handyman lived in the basement, right? Like, and I was just, like, down in the basement, 9 years old, hanging out with this creepy handyman and his, like, sidekick, like, chick down there. I think they were, like, smoking doobies all the time. I don't even know what kind of a weird environment it was, but I was down there, like, most of the time.
Okay.
Now, these people sent me up to my apartment with various videotapes of, like, super, like, gnarly horror movies. One notably had been banned in England. It was illegal to have, and they're giving me this. Was giving it to a 9-year-old. It was called "I Spit on Your Grave," and like the premise of the movie was that this woman had been gang raped, and then the rest of the movie is she's going to murder each and every one of the guys who raped her. And one of the guys, when she's murdering him, she like kind of like fake seduces him, grabs his wiener and cuts it off with a knife and throws it in the sink. And so after viewing this videotape by myself, because I lacked supervision, you know, mom and dad didn't know like that I was down in the basement with the creepy guy, and they didn't know that I was watching these things on the VCR
Banned
upstairs.
films,
Yeah, banned films. And but the next day after watching "I Spit on Your Grave," I show up in 4th grade class and they have show and tell. Does anybody have show and tell? And I said, yeah, I got show and tell. I had to tell you about this great movie I watched. This guy got his dick cut off. And they threw his dick in the sink. There's blood everywhere. It was great. It's called "I Spit on Your Grave." I think it's banned. So that was definitely a time when you got a call. And,
I think I may have been out of the country and Mom might have taken that call.
Yeah, well, no, absolutely. You were always out of the country. Dad was never around. And Mom was drunk.
So the creepy mechanic fills in, you know, the handyman.
The superintendent.
But you know, one serious note to demonstrate how fucked up the current world has become is that movie that you watched that was banned would be X-rated today, but it would be in broad distribution.
You know what? I don't know that that it was ever banned in America. I think you could actually very much find it on Netflix.
But the point, there's so many people that are fucked up because they spend all their time watching this kind of shit because it's so readily available. And at least in that era and in England, you know, there was some degree of control on it.
Yeah, but the thing is that when you ban something,
everybody wants it more.
Yeah, everybody wants it more. That was why I was so thrilled that my early DVDs were banned in Ontario. So I was killing it in Ontario.
yeah.
What, the early DVDs were banned in Canada or just Ontario?
I forget if it was just one of them or something, but yeah, banning stuff is it's like when you tell your kid what not to do, you know?
Or what words they can't say.
Put a warning at the beginning of a TV show.
Yeah. It becomes MTV's biggest hit.
Right, and you know what sucked about that 4th grade situation was the superintendent all of a sudden disappeared. Yeah, the guy was gone. I don't know.
So flash forward to like high school. Are you getting in the same type of problems or different?
Oh, dude. You know what? 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade were probably my most like well-behaved years, and that was because my passion was skateboarding. You know, I wasn't into like getting in trouble. I just wanted to skateboard, and I think that it instilled such great values in me because skateboarding with like, you know, everything we talked to Tony Hawk about, how like it's just, it weeds out the quitters, you know, it like really isolates like just, you know, kids that are willing to sacrifice and work hard and, you know, like all of these crazy things. And then after 10th grade, I quit skateboarding and decided to become a pothead.
Yeah, but I gotta stop you in the skateboarding, 'cause I remember fondly, you know, walking down Prince Albert Road with you, watching you attempt to ollie over soda cans that were lying on their side.
Yeah, and I couldn't do it, so I stomped them down.
And your biggest accomplishment was when you could get over the vertical, soda can. And we, I guess, wrongly trusted you. But you traveled all over London. I mean, from age of 10, you were riding the London Underground system by yourself.
Right.
And, you know, pluses and minuses. It was a safer place then than it has since become.
Well-
but you got independent and you got self-confidence.
It's very, very valid and notable that in America, for the most part, a young adult, life does not really begin with any level of real freedom until a kid turns 16 years old and is able to drive.
Yeah, but
However, when not even 10, when I was 9 years old, the public transportation system in London afforded me all of the freedom that 16 years and older in America gets, and I had all that freedom and I exploited it at the age of 9.
yeah, but the other thing, with the skateboard, when you had the skateboard, you went all over London.
Yeah.
I mean, you didn't just do it in the local area. And I'll never forget
Royal Oak.
Royal Oak, not far from where we lived, by the Royal Oak Underground Station. They had a purpose-built, skate park,
yeah.
underneath the highway, but built for skaters. And I said, kind of wishfully, Steve, this is great. Why don't you use that more often? And you'd be closer to home and maybe less at risk. And I don't know if you were telling me the truth or not, but at the time, I'll never forget, you looked me in the eye and said, Dad, that's one of the most dangerous places in London. They found a dead body there not too long ago.
I don't doubt that they had found a dead body. It was certainly a dangerous neighborhood.
But the point is that rather than being upset, I was impressed with the street smarts that you developed.
Yeah.
And that made me feel even better about you chasing around London everywhere you went on your own.
Sure. Yeah, I think that they clearly, to go skate the ditch at Royal Oak, that was like, hey, let's get a group together so that we're, safety in numbers.
And I didn't know that. So
Right.
I gave full marks to you for being
Right.
aware on it.
And then, okay, so now, how about this? Junior year prom. Okay, I'm in 11th. I'm in 11th grade. Dad already knows where this is going. You better believe the story my dad and I are about to tell is awesome. But do you know what is not awesome? The fact that I recently got maybe fatter than I've ever been. Why? Because I had a full-blown food relapse. I got back on the sugar with the candy and the cake and the cookies, and it got ugly really fast. Plus, my heart rate variability took a serious nosedive. And if you're wondering what's heart rate variability, it is a crucial metric for indicating how fit you are, man. And I get the info from my Whoop band and my Whoop app, which happens to be the most sophisticated fitness tracking device and app in the world. Tells you everything. And you know what? I care about my fitness, and my Whoop band is helping me get fit again. Yesterday I had a massive skateboarding session, and my Whoop app tells me, yep, that skateboarding session significantly built up a cardiovascular load. Yeah, and I love a load, okay? And I love my Whoop app, and I want you to try it. The Whoop band is completely for free. What you do is you go to whoop.com, you use the promo code STEVO, sign up for a subscription, and you get 15% off at checkout when you use the promo code STEVO. This is going to tell you how well you're sleeping. It's going to tell you all kinds of stuff. And because I worked out so hard yesterday and had to be on set so early today, I really didn't get much sleep, and it tells me, yep, I really didn't recover very much. I need to maybe get some rest tonight. And I know that because of my Whoop band. So if you want to get 15% off at checkout, you go to whoop.com, you use the promo code STEVO, and get active, get fit, and enjoy your life. Now, let's hear this story. I'm so excited for prom, right? And what I'm doing is I'm taking a pack of cigarettes and dispensing with the cigarettes, and I'm rolling these cone-shaped spliffs, right? These joints, and with the cone shape so that every other one's upside down, so that they all fit perfectly into this pack of cigarettes, right?
Like, you love packing things.
Yeah, right. And I'm all excited. I'm like, and I got the drawer, I've got the cigarette box open so you can see how they all fit together great, sticking out with the twisted, end. And it's open on display and in the drawer, which is also wide open. So Dad for one reason or another, I think it was Mom. Mom was in my room. She looks in the drawer. She's looking at a box of joints. So she tells Dad, and you tell the story from here.
Well, we didn't like it. And so clearly the only thing to do was to confiscate the joints. And this was...
Oh, and didn't Mom light one to make sure it was pot?
I didn't know that. That maybe happened. But anyway, I
smoked four to make sure it was pot.
I got the word. And so, I got a hold of the offending substance. And this was about, if I remember correctly, 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
On the day of
On the day of the prom. And I knew you'd spent your hard-saved allowance money on it, and I felt a little bit uncomfortable with the economic impact. I said, well, shit, if I give him the money, he's not going to be able to go get any more, so I'll feel better about it. And I was too stupid to wait until the next day.
Yeah. Dad
So
says
wait, you paid him back for the joints you took?
Dad reimbursed me for the weed that they stole.
Like, send me an invoice for that.
It's like it's $1,000 worth of pot you guys just took.
We were talking about $10 value.
No. It was, at least 20 pounds.
No, come on.
No.
I wouldn't
it was a whole cigarette box full of joints.
Well, maybe we didn't get all the joints, and we only got part of it, and then paid you for part of it.
And I think I overcharged you.
You profited.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Well, you have to take into account the time you took to roll the joints. It's quite an expense.
Right. Yeah. Dad paid for it, and within like half an hour, I had a big block of hash.
I love how, Ted, you just couldn't handle like the inefficiency of it. You're like, this makes bad business sense. Like, we need to fix this.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that was too much.
So what? You ran out, got a block of hash, and then
I didn't have time to roll it all into joints, but I certainly replaced the actual drugs in short order. Yeah, and so then, like I said, I was a pretty good kid. It's just skateboarding all through 10th grade. I was a B and C student. And then 11th grade, I decided, like the first week of 11th grade, I found the stoners. And I said, hey, can I try pot? It wasn't like I was peer pressured into it. Nobody presented it to me. I went looking for an opportunity to get baked. And I smoked pot, and then I smoked it the next day, and then I was a daily pothead from the onset. And I started taking acid, and I started drinking alcohol regularly. And my grades really took a serious nosedive. And if it weren't for the fact that I applied to the University of Miami on an early acceptance deal, I would have had a lot of trouble getting accepted in there because my grades were just, falling off a cliff. And when I went to the University of Miami, it was a problem right away. Dad, you as a parent, like explain sort of what it was like, having me at the University of Miami.
Well,
you'll probably want to say about the tour of the school.
I've been legitimately criticized for trying to look at life with a silver lining through the rose-colored glasses. And I remember when we went to University of Miami, on the tour, and we walked out of the administration center, and you looked at me and said, Dad, I don't want to go here. I will go here. And we went back to London, and one of the requirements, I guess was with most schools, still to an extent, you had to write an essay.
Yep.
And that was a huge issue for your sister and for most other kids coming through high school. And you told a story, and it was 1 page only.
I knocked it out.
And you knocked it out. And it was sad but poignant, and probably impacted the approval process.
Yeah, I mean, I remember the story I wrote was about how I think I said it was 3 p.m. and the school bell rang, and this 3rd grade kid was so excited and just got on his bike, sped all the way home because he had a Little League baseball game that day, and he was so stoked.
Playoff game.
Yeah, like Little League. Before leaving for school that morning, this is a true story too. I had laid out my baseball uniform across my bed, all like in particular, just ready to go throw it on and play the game. So I got suited up in my uniform and I went, hey Mom, time for my game. And Mom was drunk, in bed, and she says, I'm not driving you today. You know, like, and I'm not prepared to handle this level of disappointment. It wasn't gonna happen. So what I did was, in my uniform, I went over to the neighbor's house and I rang the doorbell, and the neighbor's mom was home, and I said, hey, you know, I'm in a spot. I got to get to my game. Can you give me a ride? And I talked her into it, and I actually had a really strong performance at that game. You know, like I was awarded a star, which was sewn onto my jersey for my performance in that game. I got a ride home. The moral of the story in this essay that I wrote was that, you know, my mom's like an alcoholic, you know, and something or other, like, you know, I was just like, and I want to come to the University of Miami to really make something of myself, you know, like, you know, something or other. The irony being that I was like already an active alcoholic, and that when I got to the University of Miami, I would be so intoxicated and in so much trouble in such a short time that I would not last for long. Yeah. So, I fucked up.
When did you see Steve's like alcoholism kick in? Did you know that he had a problem with drugs and alcohol?
The
Dad's answer to every question is, well, I wasn't in the country. I heard about it.
no. I think it became apparent to me in Toronto.
When I was in 7th grade,
You found a.
I stole a bottle of wine.
Yeah, and you got wasted and you puked
Barfed.
all over the place, and your mom was there to sort of as the first responder, and when I got home, that's when I was really worried, because concurrent with that, you had a little pup tent or something, and
I ran away from home.
you ran about the equivalent of half a dozen city blocks from home and pitched your tent in a little ravine behind the house. But
Yeah, I made it further than that. I made it like I did take one bus and get off.
No, I don't
and
think it
then
was a
get
bus.
on a second bus, because that's what I did every morning to get to school. And I walked through this.
okay, I thought you were closer. Anyway, that's
I told my sister my plans. I said, oh, I'm gonna run away. I'm gonna live in this ravine, and I set up my tent. I was in the tent, you know, having run away. Now, mind you, I ran away with no money, with no food.
Why'd you run away?
Because you got in trouble for the bottle of wine?
God knows. No, I didn't run away because I had in trouble with the word. I didn't. I had nothing to
but
complain about.
that's when I started to worry.
Right. Yeah.
And then London came after that, and somehow when you were with the skateboarding, things improved. I kind of breathed a sigh of relief and thought we were out of the woods, and clearly we weren't.
Right.
So when did you realize you were in the woods still?
Maybe when my report card came back from the University of Miami and I achieved over the course of a whole semester a cumulative GPA of 0.79.
Yeah, what was it, Ted?
Well, I said, you know, I looked for the silver lining, and there was a good side of that. You flamed out so fast, I didn't
wasn't
piss
too
away
big.
a lot of money on useless education.
Right. If you're going to blow it quick. So
Yeah,
yeah.
blow it quick. Let's make that only 1 year of tuition.
You know, it's obviously sad, and lest the wrong impression is being created. We can talk about this now and laugh,
Sure.
because it's behind us, and you've turned out fantastically well. But when I look back, I don't think I realized how scary it was.
Yeah.
And it certainly, I don't want to convey the wrong impression by laughing about it now.
Right. I mean, we had a real pretty heavy talk. I remember, I think it was the night that the re-election of George W. Bush was unfolding in 2004, and we were talking about how when I dropped out of the University of Miami, I had zero communication with you for a full 6 months. You did not know where I was in the world.
That's correct.
You heard nothing about me. You didn't know if I was alive, if I was safe. And in fact, I was having the government test dangerous drugs on me for money, and you didn't know that or anything. And I said to you about that whole period of time where I was off the radar that. I said something like, you know, I said, Dad, you weren't going to pay me to be a piece of shit that wasn't doing anything that you approved of. and you said, you didn't give me the opportunity, which is pretty heavy. Almost suggesting that you would have helped me out if I reached out, but I had too much pride to reach out.
And you know what? You're right. I would have. And with hindsight, I value the pride, and helping you out would have been enabling that trend.
100%. It's like I have a philosophy about parents who help out their kids financially too much. It's very much like if you break a bone, you got to have a cast on that bone while it heals. Like a kid it needs help, like in order to become an adult. But much like if the bone is healed and you leave that cast on, then you don't need the cast because the bone is healed, and by having the cast on, your muscles atrophy, they become weak, they become useless, and ultimately you're in a much worse position. And so many parents view helping out their kids financially as like some kind of a positive thing, when in fact it's very much just leaving that cast on, and it's you got a lame duck kid that never learns how to fend for themselves.
I guess it was after that time. You were back in London. I think it was Connecticut. No, it was just a sec, getting the years straight. Florida, and you were staying with your mom, and I'll never forget.
She kicked me out on Christmas morning.
She kicked you out on Christmas morning.
Something like that, yeah.
I've always respected her for that, and to this day, I know I wouldn't have had the strength of character to do that.
Yeah, it's tough, man.
What'd you do on Christmas morning?
I did something.
He came up. We had an apartment in Tequesta, and you came up, and at that time, everything was closed down on Christmas Day. I don't know what plan had existed before you showed up, but I remember we went to an IHOP to celebrate the Christmas meal, and I think I forget what you stayed with us for a while, and I forget what happened after that.
I mean, Mom kicked me out like a number of times.
How old are you at this point?
At that time, I would have been 20 into 21.
Oh,
and
okay.
It was just like, look, you're not willing to get a job. You're fucking making a mess. You're acting like an asshole. You say you're going to do something, you don't do it. Like, I've had enough. Get the fuck out. And I totally deserved it. And I always, ended up on someone's sofa or something.
How old would your mom been at that point in time?
If I was 20, 21, this was in...
Your age now?
I'm not that quick on
What year was that?
That would have been 1994, 95.
Like 40 or 50?
When was she born?
Or how old was she when Steve was born?
I mean, I don't know. Let's not waste our valuable
But probably
listeners'
close to
time.
your age right now. In
I
her
was just
40s.
curious, like, can you
Probably
imagine?
closer to, but I mean, I know that she was what? Was she 50 when...
She turned 40 when we were in Toronto, so she would have been late 40s.
Cool.
Right.
So basically your age.
Just think, like, could you imagine being in that position now, telling a 21-year-old kid to get the fuck out of your own kid?
I mean, hey, if you baby them, you bury them. And I probably sympathize with my dad because, as we were talking about, I went ahead and got a vasectomy because I just don't even, I couldn't stand to have a kid, and, I liken it to having, one's heart outside of their body, like, vulnerable, and it's like, it's just...
Scary.
I think that I have such a profound respect for the idea of creating a human being that I can't bring myself to do it.
Real quick, I'm just curious to know what kind of person you were. Like, when you get kicked out, were you like, why? Or were you just like, all right, fine, fuck?
I was like, yep, touche.
That's funny.
Yeah, I don't think...
you never fought it?
I never held it against her. I wasn't doing anything to deserve the roof over my head, and I was an insult to her generosity.
It's cool that you... No, go ahead, Ted.
One of the ways that you really screwed me up, you never missed an opportunity to remind me about how much time I spent traveling and wasn't there during your growing up years. And you never appreciated that I really busted my ass to get home every weekend. I mean, there were times when I'd fly down to Rio and spend a night in the airplane, and 2 days there, and then fly back in the airplane and go to the office on Friday and be home on the weekend. And I understand from your perspective that I was away a lot.
Hey, I was never mad about it.
You never bet, but it was always a dig.
All right.
And it created a bit of a complex that made me more vulnerable to exploitive enablement.
Okay. All right. I mean,
so you probably wouldn't have thrown Steve out because there would almost be this like guilt with it. You're like, oh,
I wouldn't have thrown Steve out anyway. I don't think.
Right.
But I think I behaved somewhat differently in the latter period, as a result of these frequent reminders that I'd kind of been a shitty parent because I was away so much.
I mean, you. What are you gonna do? You were a boss.
Hey,
you were a boss. You were a baller. You were killing it, and that required world travel on a very regular basis. And to your point about making it home on the weekends, to me that's just pure comedy because because the reality was that when Dad wasn't home, my mom really did her best to squeeze her drinking in while you were gone and pull it together for when you got home. So not only were you gone, but Mom was drunk, and I just was a lawless little kid with zero supervision.
Okay.
And then when you did come home on the weekend, recognizing that you had been gone, you would try to overcompensate by being really disciplinarian on the weekend. And so it was just such a completely inconsistent thing. You can't have like free reign during the week and be like really laced up on the weekend. That level of inconsistency is just absolutely futile.
Okay, but moving on to sunshine and happiness.
Dad, I'm not mad.
No. But moving on to sunshine and happiness, you've turned out well. You've got a great career. You're smart, articulate, motivated, driven, hardworking. I mean, son of a bitch. If you evaluate the results rather than the route it took to get there.
Then thank you for all those kind words. Also, going back to the vasectomy, I remember the first time that I ever told you. I remember it was like Jackass was pretty early on. I think it would have been maybe 2003. The first movie had come out. Now it's like, wow, we're this big, like this #1 movie. Wow, and I'm just thinking, what are big, huge ideas? And I said to Dad one day, I said, Dad, I got this great idea. It's called the Vasectomy Olympics. It's like I'll get a vasectomy and I'll go running through like a crazy obstacle course and it'll be great. And Dad, like, you're not a particularly emotional guy. You're very logical, and that was one time you got fairly emotional. You said, oh, no, don't do it. Don't do it.
I don't remember. I think the Vasectomy Olympics came in a lot later when you implemented in Puerto Rico. I remember.
I ended up doing it almost 20 years later.
Yeah, but I don't remember that title. I just remember having a discussion.
It was the Vasectomy Olympics from day one. And I said,
well, maybe
Dad,
you thought it, but I didn't.
I said, Dad, it's great. If you're the only person who enters a competition, you automatically win.
Can't argue with that logic, But so you were hoping for grandchildren from Steve.
Dad was, not selfishly.
No. I've just said that Steve and his sister, frankly, have enriched my life. And I thought, not having kids, he'd be missing out on something.
Right. And to that, I always said, Dad, I hear you, but you got kind of fucking lucky. You were so close to that worst thing that can ever happen to a human being, which is a parent losing a child.
I didn't realize how close that came until after the fact.
And who knows, maybe you were close or not, but like you danced with a lot of heartache and a lot of like catastrophic tragedy that I'm not willing to roll the dice on.
I understand that.
I'm not willing to roll the dice on that. And
what's crazy is like you're used to weed and alcohol and maybe cocaine, like not but like hearing people do drugs, and then when you hear Steve's like drug breakdown, you're like, ketamine, like he's doing horse tranquil,
Dad
what
was
is
never
that?
used to cocaine. I think it's probably safe to say Dad's never laid eyes on cocaine in his life.
I don't mean to say that, but like the norm of drugs, you've heard about cocaine.
I was not into that.
No. To be clear, I'm not saying that you were. I'm sorry. Like I'm just saying, like you've heard about people doing it in the movies, but like when you hear of Steve's drug breakdown,
Dad actually was with me, brought me to the rehab to check me in, and was sitting there in the room when they did their orientation process to the intake, and they said, okay, what are your drug history? What are your drugs? And Dad, for the first time, was hearing this list of drugs, and there was like shit he never even heard of in his life.
What
like,
do you remember? What the drug breakdown was?
I mean, it would have been like PCP, nitrous oxide, ketamine, like video head cleaner, like what the fuck, like it was, I mean, if you want to know,
You remember that?
Yeah, vividly. And you're skipping over what I think was one of the toughest, but one of the best decisions of my life. You were having your final breakdown,
right,
and you were sending emails to half the world talking about how you were going to drive a motorbike through your apartment
The
window
rad
and
email
Right.
list.
Everybody knows that, but what they don't know is that when Knoxville organized my intervention, he reached out to you and he said, Mr. Glover, we're organizing an intervention for your son, and we really want you to be there, maybe need you to be there. And Dad said...
I said no. And I thought really hard about it. And with hindsight, I was absolutely right. Steve and I had a good relationship then, with one exception. He wouldn't allow me to talk about his personal life. And I knew
I mean,
about the drinking and all that.
I would not let you. Our relationship was on my terms.
Yes,
because
yes.
I wasn't financially dependent on you. Like I could have ostensibly just cut you out of my life and been fine.
Yeah. So I reasoned, I think, correctly, that if I'd been there, you and I would have been in the center of the room shouting at each other, and all your jackass buddies would have been neutralized in dead silence. So I told Knoxville, and Dr. Drew called me too, and I said the same thing to Drew. I said, I'm going to come out, but I'm not going to come for the intervention, because his jackass friends will do a much better job without me than they could possibly do with me.
Yeah, and I think that was absolutely right. And so then they locked me up in the psych ward, and then I agreed in the psych ward to go to the rehab, and you were with me at the rehab.
Absolutely.
And while we're checking into the rehab, Dad says to me, once we get this behind us, once, you do this, and I said, Dad, it's never going to get behind us, So once we fix this, Dad, this doesn't get fixed. I said, Dad, I'm a drug addict. I'm an alcoholic. That's never gonna change. It's gonna be for the rest of my life. And the fact that you were married to Mom for 25 years and you still don't understand that is fucking, all of a sudden, that was day one of rehab, and
just because you knew, I knew even staying sober, it's just a lifelong struggle.
I knew all about it, and my experience with my mom. Yeah, and I said, Dad, I'm here because I'm going to take this really seriously, and if you're gonna if you're gonna not get in the way of it, I need you to sign up to be a part of Al-Anon and stuff. So Dad signs up for Al-Anon.
I went to regular Al-Anon meetings in both London and Florida for at least a year.
Yeah, and then Dad says to me, he says, I don't get it. He says, all these people in these meetings, they seem to be there for their own benefit, and I'm fine. I don't need any help. I'm just here to support you. And I said, okay, Dad, next time why don't you just hand me a beer and a joint and call it
No.
a day?
I got one thing out of Al-Anon that I'll never forget. It was in Florida, and there was a woman who was probably in her 60s, and her husband, I'm not sure if he was in recovery or if he was still struggling. But she said something I'll never forget. She said, if you're living with somebody who is mentally ill, you cannot avoid becoming mentally ill yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
And boy, that resonated with me.
Yep, correct.
Yeah.
And of course, everything worked out. So far, so good. One day at a time, and we're in a great place. But I want to just go back to where I flunked out of the University of Miami. You don't hear from me for 6 months, and then when I do show back up on the radar, I'm homeless. Sometimes at Mom's house. Sometimes she's kicking me out. And my whole story is I'm gonna become a crazy famous stuntman. It's gonna be awesome. And you tried to talk me out of it by
I remember I was in London, and the BBC had a cinema film museum or archive or something. I spent probably a couple of hours there reading about stuntmen and technology, and got copies of a bunch of articles that said very clearly that in the foreseeable future there weren't going to be any stuntmen because camera technology would make them obsolete.
Right.
And so
CGI.
I very proudly shipped all these clippings off to you, and that was before internet. So it went by snail mail. And we hooked up on the phone a week or so after the fact. And I said, hey, did you read the stuff I sent? I mean, this is really good stuff. I mean, you got to think ahead.
Yeah, like you need a new plan because stuntman isn't a thing.
And your answer was, okay, I'll just recruit a bunch of crazy guys and have a traveling circus doing stunts, and people will pay to see us around the country.
And Dad likes to say that that's sort of what happened, but
it is sort of what happened, right? I mean, you did a tour, you and...
I mean, I ended up doing that. Yeah, for sure. But so Dad was not supportive of my initial, pursuit of fame and fortune to be a stuntman because...
Sorry, was that mostly because you thought there is no success in that, or was it that like, oh, that's not admirable, that's dangerous?
No. It was the former. I mean, everything was so fucked up. I was thinking short term then, and it seemed to me the most compelling rationale was that, hey, this is something that doesn't have any future. You're the one that's going to suffer, so rethink it.
Right.
Got you.
Yeah, and I was homeless for still more like years. I wasn't getting anywhere, but I was filming what I could when I had a camera. A lot of times I had to borrow a camera, but I was filming what I could. Nobody cared. And then I ended up getting into clown college. And Dad wasn't even behind the clown college thing, really. Like, I mean, you weren't maybe aggressively against it, but you were like, well, great, now my son's a fucking clown. Like, you weren't in love with it. You weren't in love with it, and you weren't in love with the whole stunt thing. But, and this is really important, and this is going to really be what all of this culminates in, because it's so special to me, which is that before I got anywhere with all of that stunt talk and all of everything that I wanted to do, like, even though Dad wasn't supportive in the beginning, it was before I had accomplished shit, before I had any recognition, and before I had made any money. Dad took like his own initiative to have a conversation with me where he said, hey man, I gotta you remember what you said?
Yeah. And from experience, I came from a family of academics, and I was the only one that went into business, and completely different, apples to oranges. But I remember my father saying to me, I really don't care, Ted, what you do, as long as you find something you enjoy and you do it to the best of your ability. And those were about the same words I used with you.
You made reference to that talk that you had. You said, hey, I remember it like this. You said, hey, I want to acknowledge, I want to tell you that I feel I've really done a disservice to you by discouraging you in this path, that you've clearly committed yourself to and showed. He says you haven't. You certainly didn't choose for yourself a path that I would have chosen for you, but now that you're clearly committed to it, I want you to know that you have my. I pledge to support you, and I just want you to be happy and be the best at what you do. And he said that your dad had a very similar conversation. So Dad pledged to support me in my pursuit to become a stuntman before there was any glimmer of hope. And that put wind in my sails. And then at the time there was this show called Real TV where they were looking to license home video footage of notable things happening. And it was Real TV, caught on camera. And I saw the commercial and it said, Real TV, if you have any footage that you think we might want to see, like here's the number, call us up, send it on in. And I called them up and I said, oh, I don't have footage that you might want to see. I have footage that you need badly. You're hurting for what I got. And sure enough, I sent them the tape, and they sent me back this. They called me back. Yeah, we love the You on Fire doing the flip breathing the fire off the roof of the building. And I was like, I remember being indignant. And so, is that all you want? Out of everything I see, you want that one thing? And they said, yeah, we'll give you, was $500 for exclusive license of it. What's exclusive? That means what? That means
Exclusive rights.
Exclusive rights, yeah. We own it. You don't own it anymore.
Right.
I said, well, I don't know if I love that. I called Dad. The first contract I ever had to negotiate on any level, and Dad was my first call. I said, Dad, you remember that call, huh?
Yep.
Were you at work when he called you?
Dad had retired, I think, by that time.
I think I wasn't at work. I think I had, yeah. Or I was working part-time as a consultant. But
And what'd he say?
Well, I was all, Dad, this is exclusive. And Dad said, hey, take a breath, calm down. It sounds like this exclusivity is a deal breaker for you. Or it sounds like you don't like the exclusive. He says, it's really simple. You figure out at which point it's a deal breaker. You figure out what you're comfortable with. You draw your line in the sand, and you stick to it. You tell it. He says, why don't you tell him you don't want to give him exclusive rights, that you'll license it non-exclusively so you still own it, and that you need $1,000 instead of $500. It's that simple. So I told him that was what I wanted, and that's what I got.
Nice.
And given that I had Dad in my corner, I can't believe I didn't get better Jackass contracts along the way.
well, before you say that, I think we worked that out because you got paid next to nothing for the first thing, and that's
Right,
I've
paying your
learned
dues.
is paying your dues in Hollywood. But I remember reviewing your first Paramount contract,
It would have been an MTV,
MTV,
one,
whatever
but-
it was,
yeah.
and they had language in there that would have prevented you from doing anything except Jackass.
Right.
And at that point, you weren't wildly successful yet, but you were making modest income from your videos.
Personal
and you had
appearances.
that crazy spring tour stuff
Yeah.
where all you did was get drunk and swear on the stage and everybody loved you. But you were making some money.
Right.
And so
And
I
I
said,
wouldn't have been allowed to do that.
so yeah, you wouldn't have been allowed to do any of that. So I said, hey, get rid of that language. And I'm proud of you because, we got rid of that language. You had a clean contract that let you do the other things. And I just wonder how many first-time ever wannabes that are given an opportunity to sign up with MTV go back to the corporate lawyers and say, fuck this, you got to remove this language or I won't sign.
Right. I mean, who knows? Like,
Do you remember doing that? Where you're like, I don't want to take that out. What if they don't use me for the movie?
Was that the movie or that was the TV
that would have
series?
been the TV series.
Yeah.
So even you're like, here's my chance. I have this contract.
Right.
Yeah,
if
were
I
you
stand up
nervous
for
to
myself, am
counter?
I going to fuck myself, or what's like the principle there?
I mean, I think that Dad gave me confidence to do things like that. And that's what's so special is that from the beginning, from the very first contract I ever had, Dad pledged to support me, and fucking A, he did. And this is something that I've said many times, and I just feel myself getting choked up every time I say it, and particularly now. But it gives me such gratitude. It gives me such just intense, just gratitude to be able to say that I have what's your relationship with your dad? Like people might ask, I have a great relationship with my dad, and I don't have a great relationship with my dad because I'm successful. I am successful because I have a great relationship with my dad, and that's a big ass distinction. I think there are a lot of people who are successful, and then everyone jumps on the bandwagon,
Sure.
and that's not the case. Like I fucking love my dad. And here he's sitting with those 78 years old, and nothing gets by him. It's really damn impressive how sharp you are, and it's scary as hell because there is dementia in the family, and Dad's 100% here, sharp as a tack, and the idea that Dad's not always gonna be here. It scares the fuck out of me. Like, and of course, I can't have a kid because I don't even know what I would ever do without my dad.
Beautiful.
Fuck, love you, Dad.
I love you too.
Yeah.
In spite of all the shit that happened.
That's about all you put him through.
How about that, man? Like, I'll be serious here for a sec. Like, my dad's not gonna be around forever. Hell, none of us are gonna be around forever. But that podcast I just recorded with my dad will be around forever. And that makes me just feel really really like warm and good. And for those of you who hung in there and checked out the whole podcast, more than ever, I want to say thank you for sticking around to the end, because shit, that meant a lot to me. It really did. And I'll tell you, since you stuck around this long, we're on the set of Jackass, folks, and it's fucking badass. Okay, thanks.